Hello, my name is Ragdoll. I am your host this evening. Pour yourself a cup of tea, sit back and relax as we take you on a journey into the outer depths of the human psyche. This relaxing story is called Empty.
When we opened the body, there was nothing inside. No organs, no bones, nothing. We were hard-pressed to even explain how his skin remained in shape, instead of collapsing like an empty glove. We called the feds on that one. A pair of feds were there in an hour. They didn't look like I expected. I thought they'd be wearing black suits, sunglasses, earpieces. But instead, they were dressed in white lab coats and scrubs. "It's our job to blend in with the environment," said the first fed. "Can you show us the body?" I did as I was asked, and we four stared down at the body. The feds, my technician, and I. There's something about the fluorescent lights of the morgue that makes the bodies look unreal. Their flesh is pallid and dull, like one of those statues from a wax museum. "We're gonna have to call this one in," said the first fed. The second one reached for his phone, but never got to it. The body lurched upright and seized the two agents by the throats. Slowly, the flesh of his Y incision began to knit back together. The feds reached for their guns, and I collapsed to the ground with my hand on my heart. Gunshots tore through the hollow flesh suit, but the creature continued to squeeze. The agents' faces turned red, then purple, their eyes bulging and shot with blood. For a moment, I thought that they were going to pop right off, but I didn't stay to find out. As soon as I got my wits about me, I bolted, smashing through the metal double doors and racing to the stairs. My heart was pounding hard in my chest, racing to catch up with my breath. I hoped my morgue technician had gotten out too, but I didn't turn around to look. I peeled out of the lot and onto the main road, frantically swerving my way through the traffic as I raced towards the police station. I didn't know what I had just seen, but I knew I had to warn someone. I arrived at the police station a babbling mess. They set me in a room with a mirror in it and gave me some water. They told me to calm down, and there were numerous murmurs behind my back about putting me in a psych ward for overnight. As soon as I heard that, I knew that I had to leave. But as I opened the door and stepped out into the hallway, I saw something that made me stop. 4 people had come into the station in lab coats. My technician, the feds, and the man who had been on my table. I went out the back hallway and through the emergency exit. I managed to circle back to my car before I heard gunshots inside. That night, I drove as far as a tank of gas would take me, and checked into a motel under a fake name. Over the next few days, I watched the news reports for the town, but they didn't report anything strange. Some nights, I lie awake and wonder what happened. Were the police able to put them down? Did the feds come in and cover it up? Or is there a small town in the American Midwest that's full of hollow people, just waiting for the chance to tear somebody open and hollow them out? I'm not sure I want to find out.
Interesting. Everyone in this town was hollowed out like me. Let's move on to our next tale. This one is called Holes.
It began slowly, innocuously, although the first appearance was quite sudden. There was no warning, no dent. It was just there, as if the small little hole had always belonged on my calf, as though it had always been there, and always would. And after a quick inspection, I thought that I should visit the doctor soon. Then, I went about my day and it promptly left my mind. The next time I noticed, I chided myself for not making an appointment and once more thought to do so. However, this time, it seemed fascinating. Sickeningly so. On the outside of my left calf was this small, although rather too large hole. It was perfectly circular and completely black. It was as if no light could penetrate it. I studied it for hours, twisting this way and that, trying to see if there was more. I even used a flashlight to try and find what the cause was. But the hole was too deep. What I could see was regular-looking skin, and the rest faded into shadow. There was no redness, no swelling, no pain. Once I had satisfied my morbid curiosity, I went to the phone to call the doctor, but on the way, it slipped my mind. One moment I was striding confidently. The next, I stopped, completely paused, and wondered who I was going to ring. It seemed every time I saw it, I immediately remembered, but once it was out of my sight, it left my mind completely. This went on for a few days. Then, another hole began to appear. I could see a small dent, perfectly circular, and watched as, over a few hours, it deepened. It happened imperceptibly. I was only aware of it if I looked away and then back again. But, curiously, each time I looked away, I momentarily forgot what I was looking at. They were completely erased from my mind. I can think of numerous times I glanced at my calf and saw nothing but smooth, slightly hairy skin. It was a week before I noticed them again. This time there were 7. They had taken on a slightly honeycombed shape. Thin walls of skin separated each one. I used a magnifying glass, but could not discern their cause. The only thing I was sure of was that they were there, and they were not pores. When I next saw them, I was shocked and horrified. I counted 15, and what appeared to be 3 more. Their overall honeycomb shape became more apparent. I stared at them for hours, moving this way and that, seeing how they would react. They seemed to compress slightly if I stood, as though weakened. They could no longer support my weight. I went to bed troubled, but unsure of what to do. I had written, "Call a doctor about your calf, now," on a piece of paper, but when I looked at it again, the writing was scribbled out, obscured by thick black marks. When I woke the next morning, I felt a strange sensation in my calf. Swinging out of bed, I glanced at the sheet and saw a strange yellowish liquid that had soaked into the sheet where my calf had rested. The residue seemed sticky, almost mucousy. The area around the holes had a sheen, and the skin was also coated. Counting, I found 34. I tried not to gag at the sight. The sensation returned, more uncomfortable than before. Quickly, I grabbed the flashlight and tried to see what it was, but I still could not penetrate the depths of those holes. Quickly, I looked for something, anything, that was thin and long. I noticed that as I walked, my left leg seemed to sink slightly as my weight was put on it, like a spring under pressure. Finding a thin needle, I carefully pushed it into one of the holes, slowly, so as to not accidentally stab myself. As it went deeper, the golden yellow liquid oozed around it, becoming thicker and faster flowing the deeper the needle went. Finally, it stopped. However, I could not feel the tip. I could feel the sides of the needle, but nothing else. I pushed it further and felt something writhing. Slowly, ever so slowly, I pulled the needle from my flesh, dragging more of that disgusting goo with it. A slight smell of rotting fruit filled the air. Vile, but with a sweetness to it. As the needle had left my flesh, I retched. On the end of the needle was a small black worm, wriggling as it died. As I watched the creature that had lived in my leg squirm, I realized what the sensation was. It was coming from each and every one of these holes. Something was inside each one. Something was squirming in each one. Something was burrowing deeper into each one. Shudders pulsated through my body as I tried not to vomit again. I stared at the tiny dying creature, unable to look away. There was no time. No time to think, only to act. I made my way to the kitchen and grabbed a sharp knife. I sat down and set to work. I cut through the tiny pockets of skin, allowing the holes to become one. Then I dug out each and every one of those vile creatures. The deeper I dug, the more I found. Blood had begun to flow freely and fill the hole I had created. I limped to the bathroom, barely able to walk. As I sat on the side of the tub and grabbed the hose, I could feel them inside me. Hundreds, perhaps thousands, all gorging. Turning the water on, I rinsed the wound clean, clearing my field of vision. As the blood cleared, I saw them, a writhing mass living inside me. Occasionally, one would fall from the group and begin squirming as it was washed down the drain. At first, I used the knife to try and remove them. Then my fingers, I felt something sharp bite onto my hand. One of them had attached themselves to the tip of my index finger. With a shout of horror, I cut away the flesh. I carefully cut until I found tissue. Then I began to saw, hacking away, trying to remove as much as I could. Clumps of those insidious things fell from my leg. My vision grew cloudy, and shooting stars of red and black flashed across my eyes. I knew I was going to pass out soon, and still I tried to work, faster and faster, trying to finish the horrific job. I remember breathing deeply, then darkness. I awoke in the hospital. An untold amount of time had passed. A delivery man had looked inside my window to see if I was home and had seen the trail of blood. He had called the police. I tried to explain my actions to the doctors. They didn't understand. There was no trace of those creatures, but I can still feel them. I can feel them advancing, burrowing deeper and deeper, gorging on my flesh, thriving in my warm body. Soon they will burst forth. I will have to stop them. Somehow. I will.
Humans are hosts to nearly 300 species of parasitic worms and over 70 species of protozoa. Isn't that lovely? Humans have so much life in them. This next story is called Common Parasites.
Almost everyone gets those small, painful bumps on their tongue. But do you know what they really are? They're small parasites that latch onto your taste buds when you ingest certain milk products that haven't been properly sterilized. These parasites burrow deep between the taste perception cells and lie dormant for months. After feeding off the food, before your body even gets a chance at it, they begin to reproduce. The growing number of parasites cause your taste buds to swell, turn white, and become extremely painful. Once your new friends have eroded enough of your taste bud to escape, most will squirm their way toward your digestive tract. The parasites live the rest of their lives in your lower intestines. On the off chance that they head north, the parasites will find their way to your meninges. The human body has no defense against this kind of parasite, as it's usually found in other, larger mammals. Therefore, they are able to pass through your meninges easily. Slowly, they poke holes in the membranes until they have reached their destination, your brain. Acting much like certain nematodes, they start to eat away small areas of your temporal lobe. At first, you'll hear things that don't exist. Footsteps in the hall behind you, someone outside. The false sounds are small at first, usually derived from an existing noise that your body cannot identify, as the small holes make it harder for your brain to process incoming information. True to the nature of the human brain, it will begin to fill in the gaps with whatever makes sense to it. As the days go on, more gaps are made. Generally, after 5 to 7 days of infection, the parasites will reach your optical lobe in search of the rich capillaries that are located behind the back of your brain. Only the fresh-hatched children of the first parasites will make it there. The same destruction takes place, and now hallucinations will accompany the strange sounds, and in some cases, smells. Your gray matter is not enough to sustain these intruders, and will therefore slowly kill them. The worst part is, they won't live long enough to finish the job. The first sign of entry to the brain will be a small amount of clear fluid running from your nose. The fluid is different from mucus. It will not be gooey or sticky, but more like water. This is your cerebral fluid leaking from the penetrations that the parasites caused. They burrow in clusters, making small holes that will eventually rip due to the stress from the pulsating fluid. You may also notice a metallic taste in your mouth, headache, nausea, and/or vertigo. There is no cure. The only hope you have is that the parasites perish before they're able to do any serious damage.
Sometimes, things visit me in my sleep. They don't allow me to move. This story is about this phenomenon.
It is called sleep paralysis. Many people have suffered from this condition. Their hallucinations occur whilst in REM stage of sleep. Hallucinations include all 5 senses, making whatever dream you're having seem unquestionably realistic. There's very little you can do in this stage of sleep, as you are completely paralyzed. You just have to let it pass. But that's not always as easy as it sounds. Imagine, you're laying there, unable to move your head. You don't know if you've woken up or not. Completely still, your heart starts to beat faster as you hear a noise. It's like creaking, wheezy breathing, a combination you didn't even know existed. Under the breathing, you can hear a laugh, like if someone was trying to hide a chuckle under their breath. The room is almost pitch black, the moon casting strange shadows across the walls, as you stare at the odd shapes that begin to sway, dancing in the moonlight, pulsating like your dizzy head. Shiny black beetles are now in place of what were once dark blurs. They're scuttling all over the walls, the sound of their little bodies hitting one another, almost drowning out the wheezing. They're all over your body, crawling under your skin, rippling from the inside. You try to scream, but it's like they're blocking your airways. Terror is too mild a word to describe what you're feeling right now. Struggling to move, you forget about the wheezing, but it doesn't last for long. The door in your room begins to open slowly. The large black hand with long clawed fingers wraps itself around the door as the sickening smell of blood fills your nose. You stop struggling, too petrified that if you move, the creature will see you. But it's too late. A large black head pokes out from behind the wooden door, antennas jaggedly curled with round glowing yellow eyes, head cocked and jutting out, as if its neck were snapped. It would look more harmless if it weren't for its huge, cracked mouth, seemingly stuck in a permanent smile. It looks cruel, wicked, evil. Your eyes are glued to it, your heart beating impossibly fast. It slowly approaches you with its glowing eyes fixed to yours, coldly matching your stare. You can't look away as much as you try. It's hypnotizing, moving twisted and jittery, like it has many broken bones fused to one another. The small, sharp movements just add to your fear. It's huge. It looks too big to be in the room, but it must only be about 6 feet tall. Its long, skinny limbs sticking out at odd angles, and they make grinding sounds as they move. It reaches your bed finally, and bends down, surprisingly smooth compared to its previous movements. The beetles are still crawling under your skin. You can feel them swimming in your veins, pouring out of your mouth, so you're almost choking. You feel dizzy and sick. You must be asleep, but everything feels and looks so real. The stench of blood drenches the air you've struggled to inhale as the creature breathes into your face. It smiles hideously wide, as it seems it has no lips or definition of where its mouth starts and its face ends. Its tongue is also black, shiny, and dripping with thick scarlet liquid. With its talons, the monster reaches for your face, its sharp nail stopping as it lightly touches your face, sending shockwaves of intense pain into your whole body. You black out. The sun is shining brightly into your room as you open your stinging eyes. You come to the conclusion that it must have been a nightmare. Of course you had. There's no such thing as monsters. You sit up, covered in sweat, as you breathe a sigh of relief. You turn towards the door that you had dreamed about, and your heart skips a beat. Why is the door cracked open?
My doors open on their own all the time. Is that abnormal? Let's visit one of the most quiet and calm places in the world and think about it. The cave.
In a barren mountain range in northern Europe is a secluded cave. Deep inside is a wide chamber that appears to have been used in ancient rituals. The walls of the roughly circular space are densely covered in cave paintings. At first glance, they seem much like those found in other caves in that part of Europe, rendered in red and brown ochres. Look closely, however, and you will see that the most common figures depicted are subtly non-human. They are humanoid, but slightly hunched. And while it is hard to be sure, owing to the primitive style of the art, each figure appears to have two short conical horns on its head, and a hint of a tail. Look more closely still, and you will find some more traditionally drawn human figures. They are being hunted by the others, run through with spears, battered with stone axes. In some scenes, the horned figures appear to be roasting humans over open fires, or feasting on human-looking limbs. The paintings are disquieting, but they are just old pictures. The scenes they depict happened countless years ago, if they even happened at all. A determined traveler seeking shelter from a blizzard might decide to ignore the paintings and make camp. He may even light a fire. A well-used fire pit lies at the center of the room, slightly raised on a natural mound. Should a fire be lit there, wavering shadows will be cast on the painted walls. For many, seeing their own silhouette superimposed on those eerie paintings will be the last straw, driving them to their luck outside with the snow. Others will stay. Sometimes, nothing will happen. These lucky travelers will emerge the next morning, haggard from a night filled with half-remembered nightmares, anxious but alive. Other times, shadows will move on these walls, shadows cast by nobody present in the room. The wavering firelight will blur their outlines, make them hard to pick out. And some observers may believe them to be a trick of the light. Watch closely, though, and you will see that the shadows resemble hunched figures, perhaps with small horns, and maybe a hint of a stubby tail behind them. These figures will gravitate toward the shadows of those who are taking shelter in the cave. They may appear to stand over the sleeping forms. They may appear to be holding weapons, like spears or rough axes. Often, a lone traveler sheltering in the cave will never be seen or heard from again. Their fate will remain unknown. However, those traveling in a group will be woken by screams in the night. They will look for the source of the screams and find that one of their number is missing, their bedroll empty. If they happen to look at just the right place on the wall, they may see the wavering shadows of figures who are not present in the room, or at least not visible. The fire will be low and red, so the shadows dim and soft-edged, but it will appear that a struggling form is being speared and clubbed by multiple assailants, and then dragged away, out of the circle of firelight. The screams will fade slowly, seeming to sink into the rocks themselves. And is that a new cave painting on the wall the next morning? Surely not. The ochre it is painted in is just as old and dry as all the rest. No. That picture of a man being gutted by horned figures must have always been there.
That wasn't very peaceful, but such is life. Thank you for joining us. Until next time, this was Ragdoll.
Thank you so much for joining us. I hope to see you this weekend for the Hiding in My Home theory. It's also a deep dive. It's a little bit of both. And also, I hope to see you for the Halloween Party Extravaganza stream. I really need to announce the date for that, because I'm probably not going to do it on Halloween specifically. Oh well. See ya.